Good morning, I'm Pastor Dustin Abbott from Emmanuel Lighthouse United Pentecostal Church here in Petawawa, Ontario, Canada. And I'm here this morning to give you a devotional lesson that I hope will be somewhat thought-provoking and maybe give you a little bit of nuance in the way that we're viewing our world during this very unique set of events. And as we start to adjust our vision, looking past just the closing in, stay home mindset and start to look at reopening our countries, I hope that this will give you a little bit of perspective. One of the things that I have noticed in the midst of the current pandemic is a shift in common greetings and final word from people signing off, which is called a valediction. And so, typically people might say things like sincerely or best wishes or all the best or blessings or even just a thank you. But instead, I'm seeing very often people that are using the phrase stay safe. And that has become a common, kind of hashtag stay safe, and a kind of a common part of the mentality, that cultural shift that has taken place in recent months. It's a reflection of the times. And so, of course, the sentiment there is that people are both wishing health on one another and also subtly reminding them to observe the physical distancing conventions that have also become a part of our society. I want to let you know why this has not nor will not be my personal greeting. So I'm here to actually add a little bit of biblical nuance to this particular discussion. And so let me give you a few caveats before I jump into what I want to share with you, just, to avoid any risk of being misinterpreted. So first of all, I'm completely in favor of the sentiment of wishing health upon each other. Certainly a Christian godly attitude should be wishing that people have the best life possible, and certainly not to wish ill upon anyone. Secondly, I'm also in favor of respecting the protocols established by our health experts, within reason, of course, and even more importantly, respecting the vulnerabilities of others, to remember the golden rule and to treat others as I would desire them to treat me. But here's why I say I am not on board with the idea of hashtag stay safe. There is a climate of fear that has been and is being created that creates this completely false paradigm where the idea of leaving your house is akin to risking your life. And so we see this culture of fear that is being created where a lot of people are very, very paranoid now of the idea that the moment they step out their front door, that their life is going to quickly come to an end. Some of you may have heard of the term agoraphobia before. Agoraphobia is actually an anxiety disorder, that's what it's classified as being, to where one has extreme anxiety, fear over the concept of leaving a safe space like their own home. So those that suffer from severe agoraphobia, many of them have not left their houses in months or even years. And so they have this paranoid fear of something terrible happening to them if they step outside of their doors. And so the reason why it is clinically classified as an anxiety disorder is because it is an irrational fear. Now, there is risk involved in every part of life, but I also want to note that almost everything that we celebrate as a part of living, of enjoying life, is on the other side of some kind of risk. Driving a car incurs risk. I can very clearly remember, however, the joy as a young man of owning my own car and having the freedom that came with driving. I've been involved in a few minor car accidents along the way, thankfully of which I've never been severely hurt nor anyone else involved in them. So there certainly is some risk along the way, but I certainly have enjoyed the freedom and the opportunities that have been afforded me by being able to drive. Riding a bike involves some risk. Probably all of us have had a skinned knee or two along the way. I have a kind of a serious road bike that I ride at this point. That's the kind with the skinny tires and actually the special shoes that you lock into the pedals. And so really my only accident in recent years, if you want to call it that, is that I came up to a junction where there was a major crossing of a street, and so I needed to come to a stop. And the thing is that when your shoes are clipped into the pedals, you need to be thinking in advance of the fact that you've got to disconnect a foot before you get to a place where you need to stop, and momentum is going to cause you to fall to one side or the other. Well, as you probably guessed at this point, I forgot to unclick as I came up. And so all of a sudden I realize at the moment where I've come completely to the stop and I'm already starting to fight the momentum of falling over. It was too late, I didn't get loose, and so I fell right over on my side. And as cars passing by thinking, oh, look at this guy, he's got this nice expensive bike and he doesn't even know how to use it. So there is some risk involved in riding a bike. There's risk involved in getting married. There's risk involved in having children. There's risk involved in getting a job. There's risk involved in playing any kind of sport. All of these involve risk. Just this last summer, I was playing in a church softball league, and there was a freak accident where the softball missed the second baseman's glove as I was running around the base, and the ball was coming in from out in center field, and so someone threw it in hard. The second baseman missed the catch, and so the ball caught me right on the side of the face. Just a freak accident as I was rounding the base, and in the process it fractured my jaw, and that was highly unpleasant, and there was some months of recovery from that, and unfortunately there still are some lingering effects that, on the fortunate side, are at least minor, that are still with me. But even the day of, I made the statement to my wife and to others subsequently, my attitude was this: I'm in my 40s and I have been blessed with the health and the strength to continue to be active and to do pretty much everything that I've been able to do all my life. And I recognize that by being active, I'm taking a risk, and I will on occasion get hurt. But here's how I look at it. If I'm not active at this point, I will begin to slip into a more limited existence, because there's a risk involved in not doing something too. I'm not interested in being ruled by fear. I'm not interested in our society developing a collective agoraphobia where they are afraid to leave their houses or to do ordinary activities again. I believe that was and is an anxiety disorder. It is a disorder of the mind to live with fears that are irrational. Living involves risk, but I plan on living for as long as God places me here. Already immunologists are lamenting the fact that by people staying at home, our immune systems are actually being compromised right at a point where we need our immune systems to be strong. We were already too clean to begin with, and it used to be that parents would be getting after their kids saying, hey, quit playing down there in the dirt, quit eating that dirt, Johnny. Well, it turns out that eating the dirt is actually good for us. It actually helps to create that immune system and strengthen it, and children that are exposed to things like pets and the outdoors are actually healthier for it. And so now in this moment where we have all closed ourselves in, our bodies are actually weakening because we are not being exposed to the minor risks that are a part of everyday life. I've already detailed in another devotion how that social isolation has a tremendous impact on us, not only emotionally, but physically. And studies have shown that it is worse for you than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, abusing alcohol, or being obese. So I hate to tell you this, but there is risk involved in staying at home too. Life involves risk. In fact, 1 Thessalonians 5:3 says, "For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them." You see, I believe that there is a general principle here that is so true. I've seen it bear out time and again. And that is that during times when people are afraid and desperate for peace and safety, that they often will give away the farm during that time. They will compromise their liberties and their freedoms. It's during those moments that people will often forfeit their civil liberties and their privacy, all because they just want reassurances. But all of these things that come, all of these crises that come, they are temporary in nature, but often what we have compromised, what we have given away during that time, that effect lingers. Think about the events of what we call 9/11 and the terrible terrorist attack in New York and in Washington, D.C. And during that time, we began the war on terror, and it was a terrible, terrible, awful period that all of us that were living during that point can vividly remember. But I say this, those events are long behind us. The perpetrators have been dealt with. There is a beautiful new tower there on the site and a memorial to the lives that were lost in New York City that is such a moving place to visit. But in many ways, our society has moved on, but yet many of the effects of that period, heightened security, more hassle in travel, and all kinds of inconveniences where we have lost civil liberties. It was during that period that there was much more monitoring of our communications that began to come into place. And so all of these things are a hallmark of a period in which, because people cried peace and safety, that we gave away civil liberties during that time. Most of the liberties that we enjoy came at the cost of lives. People in ages past, they fought battles, they were engaged in wars in which tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of lives were forfeited to fight against a cause of evil and to secure rights and liberties that we have today. And I'm certainly not interested in lightly and easily giving those away. Freedom is never free. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York State made a statement on April 22nd as a defense of some aspects of his stay-at-home policy that was being challenged. And in that interview, he said this: "What is worse than death?" He was saying that, of course, in the severity of the coronavirus epidemic. It's a valid question, but not an easy one, as there certainly are some things that are worse than death. And here's where I want to give you your perspective for the day. Jesus said this in Matthew 10:28, "And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." You see, this passage is incredibly important because it tells us both who and what we should fear and what we should not fear. We should not fear, according to Jesus, the things that can just kill our bodies, and that includes COVID-19. That's not to say that we should be cavalier with our lives, but being prudent, managing risk, and being a good steward of our health is hardly the same thing as being afraid or living a life of fear. You can manage risk in a wise and a responsible way without living a life full of fear. And on a spiritual level, it is really important to recognize who Jesus is referring to here. He's not talking about Satan. He says, "But rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." And you'll see that the New King James that I am quoting from, it has him capitalized, because this is not referring to Satan. This is referring to God. We don't even have to live in fear of Satan. The point that Jesus is making, and it's such a liberating one, that is, as long as we have a healthy fear and respect of God. Psalms 111 verse 10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." And so if you have that proper perspective on God, the proper fear of the Lord, you literally do not need to fear anything else. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." So I can tell you, based on God's Word with absolute confidence, it is not God's will for you to be afraid of life, to be afraid of living, or to be afraid of the future. If you have a proper fear for God and realize that it is much more important to stay saved than what it is to stay safe. I've got news for you. Everybody's going to die, but not everyone has to be eternally lost. If I am right with God and I hashtag stay saved, then I don't have to fear anything else. That doesn't mean I'm going to live recklessly. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be disrespectful of the needs and vulnerabilities of my fellow citizens, but it does mean I refuse to live in fear. I am not going to hunker down and live in this stay safe, kind of shivering kind of existence where I'm constantly in fear of some kind of irrational danger that's out there. I want to encourage you to focus your attention on the thing that truly matters today, and that is being right with God. Above all else, I must be saved. And you too can refuse to live your life in fear. I can say for myself, I'm ready for eternity. So I've got one priority above all. I'm going to stay saved. I'm going to stay close to God. I'm not going to live in fear, but I am going to fulfill the Great Commission. I'm going to reach out with love and compassion to my fellow human beings. I refuse to be crippled by the circumstance and the culture in which we live right now. I'm not so worried about staying safe. Life isn't safe, but I am concerned about staying saved. And if you'll stay saved, you can say like Paul, Philippians 1:21, "For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain." In other words, no matter the outcome in this life, the Christian, the one who is right with God, has no reason to fear. If we live, thank God for it. If we die, it is the beginning of our reward. And that leaves us with no negative outcome, no reason to fear. Hashtag stay saved. God bless you. I'm Pastor Abbott. I pray that this has given you some food for thought today. And I want to challenge you that if you have not already gotten right with God, if you are not saved, if you'll look in the description down below, there is a link to a teaching series I did a week ago about salvation. I encourage you to watch it, to reach out, ask some questions, and get right with God. And that way you too can hashtag stay saved.